Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good day, and welcome to today's Sustainable Materials Management webinar entitled Preventing Food Waste Upstream, a Source Reduction Approach. Our goal is to help you learn about source reduction and put it into practice. This seminar is brought to you by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. We are pleased to have you participate. My name is Andre Villasenor, the Sustainable Management of Food Coordinator in Southern California. I serve as your moderator today. Jorge of EPA Region 1 is sitting behind the technology controls of our webinar. Thank you, Jorge. By now, you should have the GoToWebinar application running and be able to see the welcome presentation on your screen. We will advance the speaker slides during today's webinars. The slides are also attached to this webinar control panel on the screen as PDFs for you to download. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the webinar. Please use the GoToWebinar control panel to type your question in the area that says questions. Click send to submit it to us. After today's seminar, there will be a short evaluation. Please take a moment to fill it out. Your feedback is vital to helping us provide the highest quality speakers and information to meet your needs. This webinar is designed as a training opportunity for government, non-governmental organizations, private enterprise, and other stakeholders interested in the sustainable management of food. You may have heard of the food recovery hierarchy. Today, we'll focus on the top tier of the food recovery hierarchy, which is source reduction. Reduce the volume of surplus food generated. We'll start with an introduction to source reduction, and then our guest speakers from a supermarket chain and educational institutions will describe examples that prevent wasted food at the source. Our esteemed speakers are Ms. Janet Whitehead, Environmental Specialist for San Diego Unified School District. She's calling in from California. Mr. Pat Iannotti, Director of Retail Operations for Price Chopper / Market 32. He's calling in today from New York. Ms. Julianne Stelmazik, Manager of Regional and Sustainable Food Systems at Boston College. She's calling in from Massachusetts. And me, Mr. Andre Villasenor, Sustainable Management of Food Coordinator at EPA Region 9 Southern California Field Office. I'm calling in from Los Angeles. For full bios, please go to our SMM Web Academy website, epa.gov/SMM. And remember to type your questions throughout the webinar because we will have Q&A. And please note this disclaimer. We're going to start our webinar with a poll question, which Jorge is going to post for us. And you should now see the questions there. The question is, it's asking you what is source reduction? What do you think of these activities? Which of these is source reduction? Use leftovers, eat imperfect produce, conduct a food waste audit, extend lunch periods at schools, or all of the above. Please select one, and then we'll see the results in just a minute. And the vast majority were correct. Source reduction is all of the above. It does include using leftovers, eating imperfect produce, conducting a food waste audit, and even extending the lunch period at schools because that gives kids more time to eat. All of these strategies can reduce the volume of surplus food generated. I'm pleased to share with you EPA's Sustainable Management of Food program, which can help your organization prevent excess food by using a source reduction approach. EPA commenced its food recovery efforts in 2011 with the launch of the Food Recovery Challenge. Since then, we've created a library of food recovery tools and resources for you and engaged with partners across the country. Since this webinar is brought to you by EPA, what is our mission? Established in 1970, EPA's mission is air pollution by 73%, ensured that well over 90% of drinking water supplies are in compliance with federal standards, and advanced the diversion of materials from landfill through sustainable materials management. What fraction of materials going to U.S. landfills or incinerators is food? With 1/3 of food going uneaten each year, excess food is the single largest type of waste going for disposal in the U.S., accounting for over 21% of the American waste stream. At the retail and consumer levels, the value of food loss and waste in the U.S. is estimated at over $161 billion. The average consumer spends $370 per year on excess food. Meanwhile, almost 1/3 of single-parent households are food insecure. It is estimated that if we recovered just 15% of our excess food, we could feed 25 million people. According to the United Nations, if excess food were a country, it would be the world's 3rd largest source of greenhouse gas emissions after China and the US. If you had a list of the top 100 solutions for greenhouse gas emission reductions, where do you think the prevention of excess food would rank? Well, according to the nonprofit organization Project Drawdown's 100 Solutions to Reverse Global Warming, reducing excess food is ranked number 3 for its potential to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, right behind wind turbines and refrigerant management. Combine that with a plant-rich diet, ranked number 4 on this list, and you've got a powerful method in place for reducing carbon emissions at the organizational and individual levels. In 2015, EPA and the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced a national goal to reduce food loss and waste by 50% by the year 2030. In effect, our federal government is leading us in a call to action to unify behind this goal. How can we collectively cut food waste in half in the next 12 years? We lead by example with the food recovery hierarchy. The food recovery hierarchy ranks actions from least preferred to most preferred that we can take to reduce, recover, and recycle excess food. Landfill and incineration are the least preferred methods of managing our food excess. Going up the hierarchy, compost by turning food scraps into a valuable soil amendment. Industrial uses include sending food scraps to an anaerobic digester, which recovers their methane for use as energy. Divert safe food scraps to animal feed. If you do have unserved surplus, donate fresh, wholesome food to people. The top goal of the food recovery hierarchy is to make our food production and consumption efficient and sustainable through source reduction. Reduce the volume of surplus food generated. How can you reduce the amount of surplus food? One example is tracking which dishes have more leftovers and either making less of the dish or substituting it with a more popular dish. You'll learn about solutions from our speakers today. 3 economic benefits of source reduction are that you get to reduce the amount of food you buy, reduce your energy, water, and labor expenses, and save on your disposal bills. What's the data say about the economic benefits of source reduction? A United Nations group prepared a report called The Business Case for Reducing Food Loss and Waste. After reviewing 1,200 business sites across 700 companies in 17 countries, the report shows that for every $1 invested in source reduction strategies, like measuring excess food and improving inventory management, $14 are saved through returns such as reduced excess food management costs and avoided food purchases. That's a 1,300% return on investment. Remember the slide showing that if food wastage were a country, it would be the world's 3rd largest source of greenhouse gas emissions? This graphic shows the greenhouse gases reduced or increased along the food recovery hierarchy. Landfilling of food on the right creates greenhouse gas emissions in the form of methane. 1 pound of excess food sent to landfill creates over a half a pound of GHGs. Source reduction has the greatest greenhouse gas emission benefit, preventing 4 pounds of GHGs for every pound of food. Are you a restaurant, university, grade school, manufacturer, or grocery store looking to prevent food loss and waste? EPA produced 5 food loss prevention tip sheets for the sectors I've mentioned. Download these tip sheets on the source reduction webpage of EPA's Sustainable Management of Food website. How would your organization like to lead by example and earn recognition for your endeavors in excess food prevention? In EPA's Food Recovery Challenge, also known as the FRC, organizations improve their sustainable management of food practices and report the results annually. The FRC provides support and public recognition to organizations engaged in reducing, recovering, and recycling excess food. FRC participants measure and reduce their uneaten food, while endorsers educate others about the sustainable management of food and the FRC. Over 950 organizations have signed up to take the Food Recovery Challenge. FRC participants and endorsers use their own password-protected account in ReTrack Connect to measure and submit data on up to 3 different source reduction activities, as well as donation, anaerobic digestion, and composting. In 2016, more than 950 Food Recovery Challenge participants and endorsers prevented over 18,000 tons of excess food from being created through source reduction activities. They saved up to $37.4 million in avoided tipping fees from landfills. Cut your excess food in half by 2030 and save money with these 3 practices. Measure your surplus food and set excess food prevention goals. Focus on source reduction solutions and earn recognition by participating in EPA's Food Recovery Challenge. Our source reduction resources are housed in EPA's Sustainable Management of Food website. You can also contact your EPA regional representative. Now we're going to go on to our speakers for today. We're going to start with Janet Whited of San Diego Unified School District.
Okay, am I on, Andre?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. I don't know, do I need to get out of the little on-air thing, or is that fine?
I think you're good.
Are all good? Okay. Well, thank you very much. Hi, everyone. As Andre mentioned, my name is Janet Whited, and I'm an environmental specialist at San Diego Unified. And I'm happy to have the opportunity to share a little bit about food waste source reduction in our district. See if I can get my slides going. Here we go. I'm going to start off with a brief outline of what I'll be talking about today. A quick overview of our district, a snapshot of our food and nutrition services food recovery hierarchy and priorities, and then a more in-depth discussion about our food waste reduction activities with a focus on our source reduction efforts. So there are 42 separate school districts in San Diego County, with our district being the largest in the county and the second largest in the state. We have 180 schools, 50 charter schools, some at district-owned facilities or sharing our campuses. State preschool programs operate at 46 of our schools, and our enrollment is hovering right around 129,000 students. We have 62% of our students eligible for free and reduced price lunches. We serve breakfast in the classroom at 70 schools, as well as a supper program at 120 schools. We operate 19 production kitchens and serve about 130,000 meals and snacks per day. So our food and nutrition services priorities are represented here, and each of these activities can also be found in EPA's food recovery hierarchy. Since my role in the district is one of waste and resource management rather than feeding students, I had some challenges in moving food waste reduction activities to a higher priority level in our food and nutrition services department. But by letting them know I understood that their main priority was to feed students, they were definitely more willing to work with me to develop additional priorities and goals that guided our Love Food and Not Waste implementation and source reduction initiatives. And since funding and budgetary issues are huge in school meal programs, Feed the Budget is priority number 2. This priority drives the majority of our food waste source reduction efforts, and it includes recovering eligible food back into production, which most school districts do to some degree already, and reducing food waste at the source. And our third priority is to feed others. This encompasses our food rescue and donation program. And fourth is to feed the soil, referring to on-site and off-site composting efforts. I'm going to approach my talk today by touching on each of our activities in reverse order of our food recovery hierarchy and priorities. So I'll start with our fourth priority, composting. Our Cafe to Compost program encourages our schools with active gardens to coordinate with their school cafe to collect leftover fresh fruit and vegetables from the salad bar to compost directly on site. And one of our schools, Cherokee Point Elementary, collects student and kitchen food scraps for off-site composting at the city's compost facility. This is the only large commercial composting area in the city, and unfortunately, there's no current capacity at the site to add more material. Sending food scraps off-site is a very expensive proposition, though. It costs over $500 a month for this one elementary school alone. The next priority above composting on our food recovery hierarchy is to feed others. It's no surprise that as a large school district, we are throwing away tons, literally, of perfectly good edible food every day, about 9 to 10 tons per day, as a matter of fact. This was really the catalyst to get our Love Food Not Waste program off the ground and to bring a spotlight on food waste and food waste reduction to our district. Since this talk isn't about food rescue, I won't go into a lot of detail, but here's the main steps we took to implement our program district-wide. We started by developing a key partnership with Feeding San Diego to identify partner agencies that could pick up food from our production kitchens every day. We developed a route system that incorporated our food delivery trucks to backhaul rescued food to the production kitchens or our central warehouse. We created a binder with protocols for school kitchens after getting approval from our local health department. And we met with key kitchen staff to review the procedures and answer any questions. And you can see the results for yourself. Last year, over 200,000 pounds of edible food was kept out of the landfill, which equates to nearly 167,000 meals provided to those in need in our community. So next in line in the reverse order of our hierarchy is to feed the budget with a focus on food recovery. And actually, food recovery straddles several of our priorities. Recovering eligible food from meal services back into production to feed students hits our number 1 priority of feeding students, and any leftovers from this practice is also used to feed others through our food rescue program. We also include food share tables in this category, since eligible food from share tables can be shared with other students and rescue to feed others. And really, share tables at schools are a form of source reduction because they promote consumption from within the school, whereas food donation involves added time, resources, and management of excess food. But for our food and nutrition services, they wanted to reiterate to kitchen staff that appropriate and diligent recovery of food back into production helps the bottom line, which might help save jobs in tough budgetary times. Oh, excuse me, wrong order. Now here's when we start cooking with gas, so to speak. Food waste source reduction is the big ticket item for us. We're pretty proud of the fact that one of our schools, Cherokee Point Elementary, which I mentioned earlier, is a 2017 winner of EPA's Food Recovery Challenge Award in the category of source reduction. So I'm going to touch base on the programs we've implemented throughout our district that helped Cherokee Point achieve this recognition. To start, we have 338 salad bars in our schools, and most of our schools have 2 to 4 lunch periods. We started moving from 4-inch deep to 2-inch deep pans in the salad bars, especially for items that weren't taken as often and at schools with lower overall salad bar participation. Weight studies prior to this change showed an average of 15 to 20 pounds per school per day of salad bar leftovers were being discarded. Kitchen staff were filling up the 4-inch insert pans during the meal service to make them look full and appealing to the kids. And when we started switching to 2-inch pans and asked staff to only fill them so they looked tastefully empty, the average weight of salad bar discards dropped to 5 to 7 pounds per school per day. This tastefully empty concept just requires a bit more monitoring of the items and making sure the insert pans are not filled to capacity towards the end of the final meal service. And this year we're rolling out several build your own food bars at our secondary schools, such as ramen and nacho bars and sub sandwiches and burger bars. And we're using the same tastefully empty concept with these food bars as well to reduce waste. We've also really started to focus more on menu planning for food waste source reduction. All school food services departments are pretty familiar with the USDA's offer versus serve model. It's required at the secondary level, and hopefully most are also using this model in elementary grades. OVS, as it's known, also allows students to choose 3 of 5 meal components for a reimbursable meal, meaning they don't have to take all 5 components if they don't want them, which helps cut down on food waste. Students are required to choose at least a half cup of fruit or vegetables and 2 other meal components. We use OVS in all of our meal services, including breakfast in the classroom, regular breakfast, lunch, and supper. All of our main entrees include 2 of the 5 meal components. And we're working to ensure our kitchen staff, students, lunch helpers, etc., know that students only need to take the entree and the required fruit and vegetable component for a reimbursable meal. So this means milk is not required. Students often take milk, never open it, and then just throw it away. We're trying to curb this practice altogether and then direct any unopened milk to share tables. And we're also encouraging students to only take from the salad and food bars what they'll actually eat, beyond the half cup fruit and vegetable requirement. And clearly, we're not trendsetters in implementing these practices, but we're using well-tested concepts to help our students and staff understand the importance of reducing food waste at the source, not to mention saving money on food costs. And regarding menu changes, our culinary staff are always looking at ways to increase meal participation, so students will choose and eat the food that's available, or they look at how items are packaged to avoid food waste. And one seemingly small and inexpensive change that we made was to add a chili lime sprinkle, think tahini if you're familiar with that, to the salad bars at secondary schools. Just this small addition significantly increased the consumption of salad bar items. This combined with our tastefully empty concept has greatly reduced our salad bar food waste. And finally, we've been focusing on purchasing with source reduction in mind. As it relates to packaging, the way we purchase food for our meal service can have a significant impact on our waste. For example, our kitchen staff identified food loss stemming from the purchase of 5-pound bags of certain pre-cut produce, such as shredded carrots, broccoli buds, and cauliflower florets. These items were spoiling before the entire bag could be fully utilized, so the remainder was just getting tossed in the trash. We were able to work with our supplier to change the pack size to 3 pounds, which allows for full utilization of the product. Regarding inventory control, our staff is trained to order amounts that meet the needs and preferences of the students they serve. As with many school districts, we have a pretty diverse population of students, and some foods offered on our menus are more popular than others at different schools. Our staff at each school plans and orders food according to students' tastes and preferences, which helps reduce food loss and waste. We also utilize the first in, first out service method to make sure food is fresh and at its best quality, thereby avoiding food loss. Our staff also utilize a number of tools to help them forecast future food needs and orders. For example, our kitchen staff at each school are trying to work more closely with their principals and teachers to remind them that it's very important to contact their school kitchen if there's going to be a large number of student absences that will impact meal service, such as field trips, class pizza parties, etc. We've started implementing a who you gonna call protocol to encourage increased communication and reminding school staff that their help is needed to save money and reduce food waste. And when we first implemented our food rescue donation program, it really highlighted the need for better overall forecasting as there was excessive overproduction of food. Staff could truly see how much was being overproduced so they could make adjustments for future meal services. And in the end, actually our main goal is to continue to reduce food waste at the source through these methods and not really have much left to donate at all. So where do all of these efforts get us? What's the payoff? Well, for us, we estimate that our Food and Nutrition Services Department has saved approximately 2 to 3% in food costs since implementing our Love Food Not Waste program and focusing on food waste source reduction. This equates to about $350,000 to $400,000 in annual savings. Source reduction really can pay off economically, environmentally, and publicly, such as the recognition provided through the EPA's Food Recovery Challenge. We're really thankful we've had the opportunity to participate in this effort, and we hope to continue making great strides in food waste source reduction. And this concludes my presentation, and thanks so much for listening.
That was great, Janet. Thanks very much. And I've been inspired by your school's practices by keeping my own refrigerator at home tastefully empty.
Sounds great.
At this point, we can take a couple of questions. Jorge, what questions do we have that came in?
Can you talk more about the milk requirement? I thought it was a mandatory part of lunch.
So it's not a mandatory requirement. It is supposed to be offered for all lunch or meal service. But as part of OVS, the offer versus serve, students only have to take 3 of 5 meal components. So for us, if our students only take an entree, which is 2 components, which is the meat or meat alternative and grain, and the half a cup of fruit and vegetables, that's 3 of the 5. So they do not have to take milk. So no, it is not required.
Okay. How has purchasing with source reduction in mind affected plastic waste?
That's a good question. It has reduced it, but I have not I haven't measured it specifically, just because I haven't had a chance to do that.
Okay. Just bear with me one second. I got a lot of questions coming in. Just bear with me one second. You said that it costs $500 a month for compostable waste hauling. What does a $500 cover?
So that covers collection 3 times a week of 6 35-gallon food waste totes. So they're like 35-gallon carts. So about 2 to 3 on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are picked up every day from that school of those carts. And that equates to just over $500 per month, just for the food waste component, to collect it off-site and take it to the city's Miramar Greenery area for composting.
Okay. I think we'll just do one more. How did this effort start? Was it mandated by school administration? And how does this become a priority for the district?
Well, it is not mandated by our district. I mean, the state of California actually has some mandates that impact school districts for organic reduction. So we've been working towards that. But however, at our district, I've been trying for like 5 years to move this up in the priority level. And it wasn't just until a couple of years ago, with the advent of some of the legislation coming into California, that really kind of raised it to a higher priority level for our district. And then being able to show them that there are these savings that can be associated with it, cost savings. And now our food and nutrition services are really recognizing that it's a great way to save money and save on food costs and save on waste.
Perfect. We will, there's a lot of questions coming in. Just a reminder that we will be answering more questions at the end of this portion. Andre, should we continue on to the next speaker?
Sure. Let's go on to our next speaker. Thank you very much, Janet. Our next speaker is Pat Iannotti of Price Chopper / Market 32. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you very much. Once again, my name is Pat Iannotti. I'm with Price Chopper and Market 32 supermarkets. We're located in the northeastern part of the country. We have 133 stores, and we operate in 6 states. A little bit about my background: I've got 30 years experience in the grocery industry, 30 years with Price Chopper, mostly in the operations area, store manager, regional merchandiser, district manager, and as was stated, I'm currently the director of retail operations. Before I start to review the information on my slides, I want to clarify a couple terms that you're going to hear that you may or may not be familiar with. When I refer to shrink, it means waste or lost product. That's a term that we use in the grocery industry, shrink. On the waste side, it's similar to source reduction, product that is left over or spoiled that we did not sell as originally intended. On the lost product side of shrink could be related to theft, load shortages, or something of that nature. That side of shrink isn't necessarily hitting the landfill, but it's still a loss to the organization. I'm also going to refer to gross profit or gross margin. This is simply the difference between the cost of a product and the retail that the product is sold for. And lastly, I just want to mention, I do have a couple slides in here that show examples of initiatives that we have in place. These slides, there's numbers that have been put into these slides. These numbers are fictitious. They do not reflect the actual performance of any departments in our organization. They were just made up to illustrate some of the examples. So as we get started, Price Chopper in Market 32 is a sales-driven company. We've always been sales-driven. We've always focused on driving the top line in our organization. And when we're successful in doing that, we always seem to hit our yearly fiscal targets. In addition to focusing on sales, we've always focused on achieving our gross profit targets. We always knew that shrink existed, but as long as we were hitting our sales and hitting our gross profit, shrink management really never made it to the forefront of something that we were throwing a lot of resources at as an organization. That is until about 6 years ago. We realized how much profitability we were potentially leaving on the table and really decided to attack the shrink portion of the profitability equation. So how did we do that as an organization? Well, I can tell you over the past 5 or 6 years, we've implemented dozens and dozens of shrink initiatives. Again, source reduction initiatives to reduce the amount of waste that we are producing as an organization. I'm going to touch on a few of those initiatives as we move through this presentation, but just know that there are so many more, I couldn't begin to touch on them all. The first thing that we did, though, and really sent a message to our organization 6 years ago, is we made an investment with regard to our staffing. We appointed a director of our shrink initiative management program. At the time, that was me. So we created this position to manage our shrink focus and our shrink reduction performance as an organization. In addition to appointing a director of shrink reduction, we also created 9 new zone shrink specialist positions, 1 zone shrink specialist for each zone in the company. These folks are out in the field each and every day, helping to teach, monitor, and measure performance. We formulated shrink targets by department to measure performance. This is not something that we have ever had by department in the organization. So we had to come up with a way to fairly set targets for each one of our departments with regard to shrink performance. Along those same lines, not only did we set targets, but we built financial incentives into achieving those targets. So in other words, if you achieved your targets over the course of a period of time, there were financial implications for those department managers. A few other initiatives that have been implemented include the formulation of department shrink committees that meet several times per year. We involve all levels of the organization on these shrink committees, including store teammates, the people that are closest to the work. We brainstorm issues and solutions, we test those solutions, and implement what works. We've developed shrink audits that have been out there in the organization to assist in the execution of best practices. We found that when our teams execute the basic fundamentals of operating a department, we get the best results that we possibly can. The problem is we didn't seem to be getting that 100% execution all the time. So shrink audits were developed, and I'll show you an example of one of those in a moment. As an organization, we take inventory in our fresh departments, and when I say fresh, I mean meat, produce, seafood, deli food service, bakery. There's 6 fresh departments in our stores. We take inventory in those departments 1 time per month. Well, in some of the stores that we were struggling to hit our shrink initiatives, we implemented a process of doing a weekly fresh inventory in those departments. We found that by putting struggling departments on a weekly inventory process, we were able to get to the root cause of their issues more quickly and thus able to help them improve more quickly. We would put essentially, when a store or a department was put on a weekly inventory process, they would stay on that process for approximately 2 months. It was about 15 departments in the organization that we would do each 2-month cycle. And in that 2-month cycle, we would realize an improvement in those 15 departments alone by over $75,000 to $80,000 per month, just in the focus on those departments, helping them help themselves to get better. It was not only a great process for the department managers and the store teams as a learning process, but it was also great for the organization financially. From a technology standpoint, one of the things that we are doing to drive sales and reduce shrink centers around fresh item management. So yeah, you say, what is fresh item management? Simply put, fresh item management is having the right products in the right amounts at the right times when our customers are looking for those products during the day. So for example, we have a smaller store in central Vermont. How many bagels should that store produce on September 20th, 2018 in order to satisfy their customer demands for that day, but not overproduce so that we're throwing out 6 bagels on September 21st in the morning? Not only do we have to know how many bagels to make, but how many of those bagels should be onioned, how many should be plain, how many should be salt, and so forth. Fresh item management is going to help us to get to that finite production planning process and allow us to be more exact in what items we produce in every one of our stores every day. Because, by the way, that store in central Vermont is different than the store in downtown Albany, where we're going to have a whole different production plan for that store based on the demographics in that area. So we recently purchased some software from a company in Canada, and we're implementing it right now, as a matter of fact. That's going to help us in this fresh item management process. And we expect big things from that for the rest of this fiscal year and well into the future. I have some examples of these tools and initiatives on the next few slides that I'll quickly run through. This is an example of one of our shrink audits that I mentioned earlier. This is a produce shrink audit, and it's only the top half of the page, but it'll just illustrate for you some of the things that we're looking at. These zone shrink specialists that I talked about that are out in the field. These folks are, when they're in stores, they're taking this shrink audit and they're going through these departments and making sure we're executing all of these best practices 100%. And then these shrink audits come in and we measure progress, we measure performance, and we react accordingly. When the performance is good, we reward with praise and or financial benefits. And when the performance is not where we need it to be, we coach and counsel and help to bring that department along so that they do get in compliance. These shrink audits have been in place for probably 5 years now, but they change every year. Every year we revamp these to focus on where our biggest opportunities lie. And it's a never-ending process, but it's really helped us to hone in and get better execution at store level of the things that are going to deliver the best results. These next couple slides are a relatively new initiative that we've implemented this year. And what I really want you to focus on is the box that says daily shrink tolerance. Each one of our fresh departments has these 2 sheets hanging on a clipboard prominently displayed in their department. And there's a little bit of work to filling these out each day, but what we do is we set a daily shrink target for each one of our departments in the organization, and we monitor how much shrink they have each day. And when they exceed their shrink target in a particular day, people spring into action with regard to why. We try to get to the root cause of to why did we not hit our shrink target for that particular day, whether it's the district manager, the store manager, the department manager, the zone shrink specialist, myself, whoever we need to engage in order to figure out why we did not hit our shrink target for a particular day. And if we see a trend, obviously, we spend more time focusing on it in a particular department. But it's just another tool that we've implemented that brings shrink, source reduction, and waste to the forefront of what we're trying to do as an organization. Operate as best we can, try and drive sales, but do it smartly with the least amount of waste as possible. This next slide here is the next step in that responsibility for profitability equation. You'll see on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see some numbers there, and anything that's highlighted in yellow is where a department missed their daily shrink tolerance. So you'll see their store number 132, their daily shrink tolerance in deli was $355. Well, on this particular day, they had $435 in shrink. Why? And that's this report gets generated each morning, goes to key people that will help the store get to the answers why, and not only get to the answers why, but then help prevent that type of performance moving forward. The right-hand side of the equation, or the slide, shows a zone in our organization. Again, these numbers are not actual, but this is a zone in our organization that shows their results of their monthly inventory, fresh inventory process. So again, it's color-coded, so it's a very quick read. If you see red, that's performance that's not desirable. If you see black, that means you hit your shrink target by that amount of dollars for the month, and nice job. But wherever you see red, boom, that triggers us to go out there and figure out why is it red, what can we do to help, and measure performance as we go along. So there's quite a bit of accountability in what we've done here at Price Chopper and Market 32 to ensure that we're doing the right things from a production perspective. This last slide that I have here has to do with the weekly inventory process that I referred to earlier. As we put stores on weekly inventories, and we've been doing this for 2 years now, this weekly inventory process, it's not just that they take inventory every week, they do a conference call with me and several other folks in the organization every week, and we talk about their results. We talk about what did we learn as an organization, what did we learn in your department that's going to help us get better. And then what we did is as we compiled these learnings, we figured out that not just the departments that are on this weekly inventory process would benefit from this information, but the rest of the stores in the organization would also benefit from this information. And we disseminated that information out to everyone. And we noticed that once again, once folks started to execute some of these very basic things that we were asking for, they really started to improve their results. And we just have to make sure it stays in the forefront of their minds as they have very busy days, as we all know, out in retail. And sometimes the simplest of tasks become very hard to do when there's many things to accomplish in a given day. But one of the big things on this, and again, this is just the top of a piece of paper. These weekly inventory learnings, I probably got 3 or 4 pages of these. But one of the most important things a department manager does in one of our departments is write their order. And one of the things that we found is that when a department manager was writing an order for multiple days, because not all of our stores get a delivery every day. So in some cases, you're writing an order on Sunday that's going to be delivered Monday that has to last you till Thursday. In a lot of those instances, the department managers were over ordering because they were so afraid of running out of product. Instead of using the tools that we have at our disposal to help us gauge how much product we're going to need for those 3 days, they were letting their gut tell them how much to order. And we really found out that whenever we were ordering for multiple days, we were way over ordering in most of the departments in the organization. And what happens when you way over order? You end up with a lot of extra product that spoils in your cooler or on your sales floor and becomes shrink in the organization. So we pass that information on. We monitor it through the zone shrink specialists, through the district managers, through the store managers, and lo and behold, we got better once we shared that information and that technology with the rest of the chain. I want to, finally, as I stated earlier, shrink will always be a part of our business. But when we do have shrink, we also follow the food recovery hierarchy that's been mentioned a few times already on the call. We never want to run out of product, so we're always going to have some shrink. What's the best thing to do with that shrink once it becomes identified as such? And we've become very involved in the fresh recovery program as an organization. And we have all but 6 of our stores on that program right now. And the only reason 6 of the stores aren't on there is because we can't find anyone to pick up the product in those stores. The food, they're in our outlying areas, and the food bank can't get to them right now. But, those are some of the things that we're doing here at Price Chopper from a fresh recovery, from a source reduction perspective. I can tell you, we are halfway through our fiscal year right now, and we are headed for some of the best shrink results we've ever seen as an organization. We just need to maintain what we're doing, and there's great things to come.
All right, that was excellent, Pat. Thank you for that great source reduction perspective at supermarkets. We hope people out there that are in the supermarket business can put some of your suggestions into practice. What questions do we have, Jorge, for Pat?
A couple of people want to know, how do you define or set a shrink target?
Well, what we do is we look at our best performers in the organization. And when we look at the best performers, we kind of categorize our departments. So let's take produce, for instance. What we do is we break our produce department into 4 quadrants with regard to sales volumes. So we got quadrant 1 that has our biggest stores with our highest sales volumes, quadrant 2, quadrant 3, and quadrant 4. And then what we do is we look at who had the best shrink performance in quadrant number 1. What are our top 8 or 10 stores out of those 34 stores in quadrant 1? And then what we do is we have implemented a process called gap closure. What we do is we try to bring the stores in that quadrant closer to the best performers in that quadrant. We don't expect them to close the gap entirely, but we want to get them closer, hence the name gap closure. So what we do is we identify, what's the best 20% doing in that quadrant? What is the shrink that they're achieving? Why can't everybody else get to that same number? But we don't expect them to get there all in 1 year. We bring them closer with that target. And then the next year, we'll bring them even closer. And that's how we develop the targets by department. It's called gap closure here in our organization.
Okay, excellent. That was one of the questions that was asked also. So thank you for answering that. The next question is, how do you ensure that the daily shrink tolerance sheet is actually filled out? Is there somebody in charge at each store?
Well, the store manager is ultimately responsible to make sure that's done each and every day. But we have folks in the field every day, zone shrink specialists, district managers, which we call zone directors, product specialists. We have people that visit stores from the headquarters each and every day. And we've implemented a process where if someone is walking your store and they're walking, deli, meat, seafood, and so forth, the first thing the department manager does is bring out those 2 clipboards, and we talk about we talk about that performance before we get into anything else.
Okay. Another question is, has cutting shrink too much in some areas reduced sales performance?
We have had instances where we've maybe swung the pendulum a little bit too far in one particular department here and there, where there could have been some sales implications, but we recognize that very quickly, and we fix it rather quickly, and that's something that we will not let happen. We will not let our desire to reduce shrink impact our sales in any way.
Okay, and this last one, do you ever offer customers sales on imperfect products, and do you use fading produce to make other products, reuse?
We don't use produce to make other products. We do donate that produce, though, to the Fresh Recovery Program. And with regard to other products, we do have a markdown process within our company. You know, most departments have a way to mark down product, you know, whether it's half price or whatever. You know, there's different standards in each department, but we do have a markdown process that we go through before product actually becomes shrink. We try and sell it at a reduced rate.
Excellent. And once again, we'll be answering more questions at the end of each one's presentation. So, Andre, should we continue?
Sure, yes. And I think that question was actually asking about imperfect produce.
Yes, thank you.
Products.
Yep.
So now we'll turn to Julie Stelmazik of Boston College.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to share our food waste reduction efforts at Boston College. And for those still tuned in, thank you for sticking around for the last speaker. I'd like to start by giving an overview of Boston College Dining Services, which will help give some context to the initiatives I'll mention later. So we are a proudly self-operated food service serving 22,000 meals a day, which amounts to about 4 million meals every academic year. We have 14,000 graduate and undergraduate students, 80% of which are on the meal plan. We're open to the public and all you care to eat, which actually sets us apart from most college dining programs, which are all you care to eat buffet style. And because of this, we actually don't have much post-consumer food waste since students pay for what they want to eat. However, because about 60% of our food is actually taken to go, we tend to have more post-consumer paper, biodegradable container waste than food waste. But since we're talking about food waste prevention and reduction at the source, we all know that it certainly has the greatest opportunity for mitigating the negative impacts of food waste. And like my co-presenters, many of us are already implementing some form of these reduction habits, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because it just makes good business sense. Food wasted, of course, is money lost. So today, I'd like to share how we at BC have adopted a few of these habits that I've highlighted here in our college dining operation. But before I get into that, I wanted to start with some of the challenges that we have to actually achieving zero waste back of house in the kitchen. While we try to prevent waste as much as possible, we still face a few hurdles to eliminating it completely. Our greatest challenge is striking a balance between not running out of food for our customers and having no leftovers at the end of the day. It's important to us that students who come at 8 p.m. have the same food options as those who come at 5 p.m. And so this need to always appear fully stocked can make it challenging to really strike that balance. In addition, there can be significant fluctuation on how many customers we have in each dining hall, depending on the time of year, campus events, or even the weather. So this forces us to constantly be adjusting our prep and find ways to repurpose leftovers for the next meal period. A second challenge that we face is simply finding the time and space between meal periods to repurpose leftovers or work them into existing menus. And lastly, our strict policy around allergy labels can actually make it challenging at times for cooks to prepare off-the-cuff scratch-made dishes with food scraps. The turning point for us was really a few years ago when we decided to start understanding the source of our waste in the first place. We needed a better way to track and quantify our waste in the first place in order to be able to manage it. Our management team decided to put a lean path tracking scale in one of our main dining halls to begin that process. And this was the first step in really setting a baseline for us to measure our improvements. And for those of you who don't know about lean path, the way it works is by first identifying the type of food being weighed, the reason, such as being overcooked, overproduction, or spoilage, and you can see on that little screenshot on the right some of the different categories that we have, and then where it goes next. So an employee using the scale asks two questions. First, can this be repurposed into another menu item? Second, if not, can it be donated to our food rescue program? And if it can't be donated or repurposed, then it goes to our compost collector. And the way that we measure our savings is a week over week basis from our baseline. So the baseline is really a key part of the process for us. Once we had our Lean Path tracker in place, we instituted a training program to engage employees through two strategies. First, we started a SWAT, or a Stop Waste Action Team, which trained and engaged our kitchen employees with food waste prevention. And second, we assigned a lead champion to ensure that waste was getting tracked during each shift. One of the hurdles that we faced was when we noticed that staff were not always weighing the leftovers. And so we soon learned that they were fearful of being blamed for, quote, wasting whatever it was being weighed. And so our team quickly regrouped and created a safe environment where employees could use a manager's name, for instance, to log in. And we reiterated the overall purpose of the machine was to prevent food waste, not to point fingers at who was wasting the food. Once our team was more bought into the system, we found that they actually took pride in the individual impact of each report. As you can see on the right here, it immediately gives equivalents for resources saved. And we actually found that water was something that really was important to them, to know how much water they were saving by weighing the food waste. We also realized that the best ideas came from frontline workers who came up with creative, simple, and immediate solutions. For instance, our bakery display always had the most leftovers each night. Our managers communicated the problem, and our team came up with the idea to just rotate the rectangular displays from vertical to horizontal so they took up more space in the display but required less cookies to appear fully stuffed. Another idea you can see here on the left was to cut down the salad bar items at the end of the night without leaving the display half empty. As you can see, the team just gave a makeover to the display, and after 2 weeks, waste was cut down by 50%. Since we started weighing our food waste 3 years ago, we've reduced our waste by 60% over our baseline and now have Lean Path trackers at all 4 of our main dining halls. Our savings have amounted to significant greenhouse gas reductions, and above all, it's helped us create a culture of food waste prevention. So in conclusion, I just wanted to share 5 takeaways that we learned in the process that really helped us be successful. We ultimately found that setting a baseline, training managers, and fostering employee buy-in were critical to our success. In the future, we plan to train more champions across our operations, and we hope to continue finding creative ways to prevent food waste in the kitchen. So thanks for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Julie, to Boston College's proactive approach to source reduction.
Okay.
What questions do we have for Julie specifically, Jorge, before we open it up to all speakers?
Okay. How do you determine which ingredients should be donated over composted?
So how do we decide what will be donated over composted? So we always try to donate anything that we can. We actually have students come in 5 days a week after each meal period, and then they package it up and it gets donated to a local food rescue nonprofit. So it's anything that hasn't been touched, right? So of course, nothing in the salad bar that was open to the public. is able to be donated. So it's anything that our servers have been serving with gloves on that has not been served, you know, like leftover lasagna, for instance, that we also are not able to repurpose, right? So that first question is, are we able to repurpose it? Is it chicken, for instance, that we could put on a pizza? And if it's not, if it's something that's usually already prepared, that we're not able to repurpose, or for instance, it's maybe just not enough to put back down on the line, then we'll donate it.
Okay. Are there any student-focused initiatives you all put in place to encourage food reduction in source waste?
So as I had said earlier, given the nature of our operation that we're a la carte, students pay for what they eat. And so that really helps us with kind of the post-consumer reduction, because students tend to just, you know, take enough food of what they want to eat. The issue that we have can sometimes be with the salad bar, as you can imagine, but we do have, I think we have 6 different sizes of bowls, everything from a small 4-ounce yogurt cup to a 12-ounce salad container. So students can really make that decision. And if they buy the smaller container, then they pay less. And so it's really up to the individual to decide how much food they want to pay for and eat.
Okay. Here's another question. Have you considered offering a discount to students who bring your own container versus the costly and numerous to-go containers?
Yes. Well, I say yes. So the Board of Health actually does not allow us to have our customers bring in their own reusable container. And so we do have Chinaware. And so students, staff, or faculty, whoever's eating, can always choose a Chinaware option. And if they can't, we actually just piloted this fall semester a new program we call Green to Go. And they're these reusable to-go containers. And so the students can buy into the program for one fee, and then they exchange it for a carabiner when they're not using it. And so it's a simple system that we're hoping really takes off, and it really came out of students. We have a team of student sustainability interns that work for us in dining, and that idea really came from them, and they made it come to fruition.
Okay. And was it easy to find waste reduction champions?
It was not always easy. We have some that, you know, they're already bought in, right? They're already bought in. You don't have to explain anything. And then there's others that are a little skeptical. It's more work for me. It takes more time. It's this additional thing that I have to do before I leave my shift. And so what was important is for us to kind of take the people, and particularly the managers that were excited about this, and give them a platform to really feel successful and be able to experiment with it. And so once we had that team, then it kind of permeated down into the rest of the unit.
Okay. If you could just do me one of the person who asked the question about the reusable container, you kind of broke up a little bit.
Sure, I can repeat that. So, yeah, a lot of colleges and even businesses are starting to use this who have a dining program. It's a reusable container. It's a hard plastic. We get it from a local company called Preserve, and it has a little latch, and students can now buy into this program. So or staff, faculty, whoever, they purchase this container, which has different departments and a latch. And then they can use it in the buffet line. They could use it for anything that they want to get in the dining hall. And then they take it wherever they want, back to their dorm, back to their office, and then they bring it back empty. They return it and they get a token, a carabiner in exchange. And then next time they want to go and use that container, then they give the cashier that carabiner, and then it kind of, you only pay once to get into the system.
Okay, we'll do one more, and I guess we'll open it up for our rest of our panelists. How do you celebrate your successes with students, faculty, and staff?
That's a good question. We're always told that we don't tell our story well enough, and I actually came on last January, so I've almost been here for a year, and that's a big part of my role here. So, you know, we're on all the social media platforms. So we Instagram is a big following, and Facebook. But we also are in the dining halls a lot. So we have tabling events, we do pop-up events. We also have a dining advisory board, which is actually a really great platform that we have all these different student groups on campus that have some sort of vested interest in dining, be it student activities board or the athletics group. And they come to us, and we get to kind of share what's happening, what's new, and also just answer any questions that they might have or concerns. And so that's a really great way to kind of continue this dialogue. And we meet twice a semester throughout the school year.
Excellent. And just a reminder too for the folks that are inquiring about the presentation, in your panel, if you can locate the handouts tab, if you click on it, all the presentations could be downloaded while the webinar is live. Okay, Andre?
Yeah, so we can just open it up for questions for all 4 of the speakers that you see on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess this is for you, Andre. Is the value for excess food shown as a country for the U.S. alone or worldwide?
It's $161 billion worth of food going to waste in the U.S.
Okay, and this is a question: can an organization in Canada sign up to be a participant in the FR Challenge, Food Recovery Challenge?
The Food Recovery Challenge, it's a program of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, which means that it is for entities that are actually based in the U.S. that have an address in the U.S. So if a Canadian company has a facility in the U.S., that U.S.-based facility could certainly join. However, anybody worldwide, any organization wants to access our resources like our webinars and the different measurement tools that we have available on our Sustainable Management of Food website, those are available to anybody.
Okay, and this question is for Janet. Have you received any feedback from parents? Are they able to incorporate some of these concepts?
We haven't got a lot of feedback from parents. We're still kind of doing more of we call it the back of house and the kitchen side. And as Julianne was mentioning, trying to get out and be a little more visible is something that we're working on as well.
Okay. And Andre, this just came in. How does the U.S. compare to other countries in regard to food waste?
Well, there's been different studies on which countries manage their excess food the best. I've seen some saying that France is on top. I think that the U.S. has made a lot of progress because now we have our goal to cut food waste in half by the year 2030.
Okay.
So we're getting there.
All right, Julie, this is for you. Has Boston College looked into biodiesel and anaerobic digesters as sources for renewable energy for your campus?
Yes, actually, our composting system that I mentioned before, whenever food can't be donated or reused and goes to compost, it actually goes to this company called Save That Stuff, which is managed by Waste Management in the city of Boston. And they actually process all of the compost into an anaerobic digester, which is a waste to energy facility. We have been thinking about doing something maybe on campus, but we're kind of a ways out from there, and so still thinking about that.
Okay. And Pat, how do you adjust to an increase in demand?
Well, a lot of what we do is based around math and history. If you can forecast out using math and history, our trends typically repeat themselves year after year as you go from month to month. So we always leave also a little bit extra. So when we build a forecast for a particular item in any department, we always put in a shrink tolerance so that we're planning on overproducing, but we're overproducing in a controlled format, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And this is another question for Julie. Do you work to reduce college hunger on your campus?
Could you repeat that again?
Sorry.
Do we work to reduce
college hunger on your campus?
Yeah, that's a question that we've gotten a lot from students, and it's a sensitive issue because it's not always the responsibility of dining or even within the capacity to impact that. It's really an institutional conversation, and that conversation is being had. But one of the ways that we tackle that within our sphere of influence is through this on-campus food recovery program that we have, where students come into the dining operation at the end of every meal period, and they package the excess or leftover food that we couldn't repurpose, and that goes out to local nonprofits in the city.
Okay. This question for Janet. You mentioned that students were encouraged to take only the food they would eat from salad bars. How do you run all this effort, and how did you determine how effective this was?
Well, so we're really just starting this year to really do the, choose what you want, eat what you choose kind of focus for our students, and to really get them to understand, what is required. We're including it in our nutrition education to really continue to, inform students about all the healthy and nutritional benefits of the items on the salad bar. We would like it if they took everything, but that they would eat everything that they took. So that's kind of where we're focused starting this year more. And we haven't really had a good opportunity to measure it yet since our schools just started a few weeks ago. So hopefully we'll have some more data and information towards the end of the school year.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Do apologize.
I have a question for Janet, actually. What were the challenges of it? Well, first, can you just explain what a share table is, and what were the challenges of establishing share tables?
So share tables are basically, a table or an area set up where students that have taken an item, maybe it was required from the meal service, or they took something that, they thought they were going to eat, but then they decided they weren't hungry enough, that they could place it and make it available to other students during that same meal period. And so there has been challenges in trying to work with, let's say, local health department on what can be placed on a share table, how are the items kept cool or hot, and there's differences of opinion in different, even in California, different health departments have determined, if you can put an apple on a share table. I know in Northern California, some of them, you can put an apple, which has an edible peel, and they have certain, guidelines for that. But here in San Diego, our health department will not allow an apple to be placed on a share table. So there's still kind of some of those challenges and trying to kind of work through, kind of talk our health department people into it, and just get the word out to students, and also make sure that it's managed safely. You have to have a monitor, somebody that can kind of make sure the packages are not, compromised, there's nothing opened or like I said, compromised. So we have a lot of informal share tables, and we're trying to make them more formalized to make sure that we're in compliance with all our local health department regulations.
Oh, Jorge, do we have maybe one or two more questions before we wrap up?
We probably could wrap up. I'm scrolling through the questions, and they all seem to have been answered.
Well, we do thank our speakers, Janet, Pat, and Julie, for sharing their insight into how you can prevent food waste upstream, save resources, and get a return on your investment by using a source reduction approach. We appreciate your joining this month's SMM Web Academy and invite you to visit epa.gov/SMM for upcoming webinars. We do have another webinar planned October 18th. It's called Regional Cooperation to Harmonize Recycling Programs, Tools and Tips. The announcement and the registration link should be posted this month, so you can go to epa.gov/SMM. Please make sure that you complete our evaluation form, which you'll be getting after the conclusion of the webinar. And we do plan to post the webinar recording and slides within the next 2 weeks. This concludes today's session. Goodbye.